Welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about Kindle Unlimited. I'm going to tell you what it is and basically is it worth it, and then at the end I'm going to give you some of my favourite books that I've read on it. It's a book subscription service which you pay £7.99 a month to use, and you have access to over 1 million books, and this is including comics, magazines and audiobooks. It's depending on how much you read, this can be extremely worth it. So I typically spend between 99p and £4.99 on books when I buy them on my Kindle. So if I'm reading at least a couple books a month on Kindle Unlimited, I do find that it tends to be worth it. I got the introductory offer, which meant that I got the first 3 months for 99p, and this was really good because it helped me decide that I do in fact read enough books for this to be worth it. And so after the introductory offer, I did find that I did keep paying for it for a couple of months. I do think that you don't need to have this year round, and possibly when you're busier it's not so good, because if you're not reading enough books, it doesn't tend to be worth it. So for example, if you're really busy and you've got exams, it's not going to be as worth it as if you're on holiday and you've got loads of time to read. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. This is also really good if you tend to read across multiple devices and like to swap between audiobooks and reading books. So not all books have the audiobook counterpart, but for the books that do have the audiobooks available, you can pick up where you've left off and just change between the two, which is really good. All in all, I do think that the Kindle Unlimited is quite worth it, because when you're reading a lot of books, it's nice to branch out sometimes and read books that you wouldn't normally read, and because you're not paying for the books, there's not a lot of pressure to enjoy them. So if you don't enjoy them, you don't have to finish them. And I've just found that I am reading a lot of books that I wouldn't normally pick up, and it's exposed me to a lot of new books, and there are some really good books on Kindle Unlimited, and I want to recommend 5 books for you. So the 5 books I want to recommend today are, sorry, I keep looking down at my laptop because I've got my notes here, but I've got 2 books by the same author, and the first one is called Every Last Secret and the second one is called The Good Lie, and these are by A.R. Torr. These books they're not necessarily masterpieces, like they're not classics, but they're really easy reads. Every Last Secret is told from the perspective of 2 women, one called Kat and one called Nina, and Kat is a very wealthy woman who lives in a neighbourhood. She's got a very successful husband, she has a lovely house, and this new couple move in, and that would be Nina and her husband. And Nina and her husband, they aren't as wealthy as Kat and her husband, and slowly Nina gets a little bit obsessed with Kat and her lifestyle and her husband. So I won't spoil anything, but it's very good. And the second book by A.R. Torr is called The Good Lie, and it's completely different to Every Last Secret because this story involves the murders of teenage boys. So I think there were a couple murders, and it's the work of a serial killer, and eventually one man is arrested. So 6 teenage boys have been murdered, and luckily the last one escapes, and he tells everyone who the serial killer is. But one of the victims' fathers, who sadly did not manage to escape and was murdered, doesn't think that this person is responsible for the murders. So it's just going through the story of him going to trial and figuring out the truth. So the third book I want to recommend is called The Ghost Tree by Barbara Erskine. This is one of my favourite books that I've read from Kindle Unlimited. I think I gave this 5 stars, which I don't often give book 5 stars, so it's a really good book in my opinion. It's a historical fiction, and it starts with this young lady called Ruth who goes back to Edinburgh after her father passes away because she has to clean out the family home where she grew up. And while she's clearing it out, she finds some letters and other things from an 18th century ancestor of hers who belonged to a noble family but was very, very poor and had to pave his own way in the world. And along the way he made some enemies who, I mean, this book is a little bit out there because some of these characters exist beyond death as well, hence the name The Ghost Tree. And it's just really interesting how all of these storylines are intertwined, and in the current storyline, in the modern storyline as well, sorry, there's also a lot going on. And again, I don't want to spoil on anything. When she goes to Edinburgh to clear out her family home, she finds that in her absence a young man named Timothy has moved in. It appears that Timothy and her father became quite close whilst her father was aging and probably just wanted some company, and there's a lot going on there with him as well. The fourth book I want to recommend is called The Patient Man by Joy Ellis. This is part of the series, but this is the only book from the series that I've read, but I'm sure the other ones are just as good. I did give this book 4 stars because I did find the ending to be not very satisfying, but aside from that, this is a really good book, and it is about a serial killer who, as the title suggests, is very, very patient, and they're constantly trying to find him and track him down, but they are constantly one step behind. And a lot of the current investigations that are going on just happen to be linked to him. So if you're interested in serial killer novels, this is definitely for you. It's like an episode of CSI. The last book I want to recommend is called Her Perfect Family by Theresa Driscoll. This was a really good book. It's classed as a psychological thriller, and to start with, this girl is shot at her graduation. This is the very start of the book, so that's not a spoiler. And she goes into a coma, and just through the investigation of trying to figure out who's responsible for this, you learn a lot about her seemingly perfect family, and of course they are not as perfect as they seem. After this daughter is shot at her graduation, this private investigator who used to work for the police is one of the first people at the scene. He eventually does help investigate her almost murder. And those are all my book recommendations. I do hope you give Kindle Unlimited a try, because I have read so many different books that I never would have considered reading before, and I found some of my favourite books off of Kindle Unlimited just because of the sheer variety to all these books that I have access to now. So thank you so much for watching. I really, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.